So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the reading, and if you can go to the last 3 pages. Actually, this page has a number 10 at the top on the right-hand side. Yeah. And again, he talks a lot about blaming, how you have to give it up. You have to give up blaming. And why do you have to give up blaming? There's no one to blame but yourself, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about this concept. Because there's no one to blame but yourself for certain situations. There are things, because I want to be real clear about this, because there's some things that I'm not saying. If something bad to you happens, I'm not saying that it is 100% your fault, but it's your 100% how you respond to that fault. I mean, that thing that happened, right? So, and the kinds of things that I'm thinking about are things like abuse as a child. Sometimes things happen to children, and it's not their fault. Or even, oftentimes there's some kind of sexual abuse that happens to someone. They get raped or other things. And I'm not saying those things are their fault. How they respond to those things is important, right? And so Stephen Covey, and we'll hit this when we get into talking about our values, talks about this particular principle, which I think is important. And what Stephen Covey talks about is this. That each of us have this circle of influence or circle of control. All right? And so what are some of the things that are inside of this circle of control? What are some things we have influence over or we have control over? Okay? Okay? So choices and decisions, what else? We got 3 from the starter jar, right? What are the 3 that we can use from the reading? Okay, so our actions, what else? Our thoughts. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Let me rewrite this. This is no control or influence. So I'll do this the other way. First of all, what are some of the things we have no control over or no influence over? What are some examples of things we have no control or influence over? Yep. We'll just say nature, right? I mean, I can't make it any hotter or colder. There's nothing I can do about the weather. What else do I not have control over? Yep. Right? I have no control over what other people do. I may have limited influence, right, Spencer? But I definitely do not have control over it. All right? What else? Death. And its counterpart, what? Life. Right? I can't make that bottle come to life. You can't animate that bottle. I also don't know when death is coming. I do know that it is for all of us, right? What else? Time? Anything else you would, what would you ask, Spencer? Things that we have no control over or no influence. Yep, so we have nature, so the weather. All right. Sleep. Sleep? You don't have control over sleep? Sounds like a personal choice. All right. So we'll just stick with that. So those are some of the things we don't have control over. All right. What are some of the things that we do have control over? We said that we listed those off, right? What? Yep, your thoughts. Yep, your choices and decisions. Don't be surprised if you see like a pop quiz with some of this information on it. Hint, right? Actions. Yep, behaviors. And if I had to give this a whole category, I'd say ultimately it is what? You. Anything related to you, you have some control or influence over. Right? So what Stephen Covey offers is that there's two ways in which to respond with all of this information. Is that you can be reactive or you can be proactive. So when we say reactive, what are we talking about? What does read mean? Okay. So, yeah, say it. Is reactive being offensive? It'd be more defensive, right? So when we talk about reactive, we're talking about responding the environment. When you're being reactive, you are responding to the environment. So and sometimes we refer to being reactive, particularly when we talk with young people or about young people, we say that they suffer from a lot of group what? Peer pressure, right? Reactive. The environment is dictating what my behavior should be. So I am responding to the environment. So for example, if I am being reactive and the weather is bad, it's cold and it's snowy and sleety, and I say, you know what, it's snowy and sleety, I'm not going to class tonight. Am I being proactive or reactive? I'm being reactive because the environment is influencing me and influencing my behavior. All right? Proactive means to what? If reactive means to respond to the environment, proactive means to shape the environment. I'm not going to let the weather determine what I do. because I have some goals and aspirations and I can make choices. So if, same situation, if I'm going to be proactive and shape the environment and the weather outside is frightful, what do? They say he's delightful. What do? I still go anyway, but but there's some specific things that I do. I prepare, I put on coat and gloves, I warm up my car early. There's a bunch of antecedents that I do to overcome the stuff that I don't have control over. Okay? So I prepare. I'll do that next week. All right? So proactive and reactive. So we must live our lives from our circle of influence, which is this, the circle right here. This is what we have control over, this is what we can influence, and that's ourselves. So the center circle is our circle of influence or control, and we're being proactive, projecting out into the world. Because I can't control all this other stuff, but I can control how I live and operate in the world. Okay? How I live and operate in the world. Going back to your reading, what did you think of these yellow alerts? Oh, before we get to the yellow alerts, I thought it was really interesting that that Jack Canfield starts to talk about you either create or you allow everything to happen to you. And he gives some real practical examples of things that people will say have happened, these things are happening to me, when in fact, these were choices people made. For example, you didn't follow through on your threats to take away privileges if your kids didn't clean up after themselves, and now the house looks like a wreck, right? There were some things ahead of time that we could have set up, some mechanisms, but we failed to do that. So now there's a result to that, right? There's a consequence to that. You didn't demand he join counseling or leave the first time he hit you. Now you're still getting hit, right? There's some antecedents that could have happened but didn't, and so people find themselves in that situation. You didn't attend motivational seminars, blah, 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 and now other people are getting ahead of you. You didn't take the dog to obedience training, and now they're crazy, right? I mean, they're eating remotes and tearing up underwear. I had a dog that just went through underwear like crazy. It was just, it was horrible. Had to take so many trips to Victoria's Secret that they thought that the underwear were for me. You know, it was like, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, not for me. You didn't go back to school, and now you're being passed over for job promotion, right? These are all choices that folks have made. And when you talk about the yellow alerts, it's so funny because a guy was telling me a joke. Let me see if I can remember how it went. He said, there was a flood in his community, and he was praying that God would come and save him. And so the police came to evacuate his community, and the police knocked on his door and said, "Sir, we're here to take you out." And the gentleman said, "No, thank you. God will provide." And so the flood started coming. So he climbed out of his window and got on top of the roof, and a boat came by, and they said, "Sir, can we help you? We got to get you out of here." And the guy said, "No, thank you. God will provide." And then the water rose up a little higher, and he's standing on his chimney, and a helicopter comes by and says, "Sir, we've got to get you out of here." And he said, "No, thank you. God will provide." And so the water rises, and the guy drowns. He goes to heaven, and he's standing at the pearly gates, and he says, "Gabriel,
I want to talk to God. And so he takes him up to God, and he says, God, why didn't you help me? And he said, I was waiting on your help. And God said, who do you think sent the policeman? Who do you think sent the boat? And who do you think sent the helicopter? Right? Oftentimes, we get these warning signs and we get the things that we're asking for, but we don't recognize them or we don't take advantage of them, right? I know you've had an experience because I've had an experience when you're with someone who's supposed to be a friend and they do something that's not quite friendly, right? Or you hear them talking about somebody else. You know that they probably have some negative things to say about you, right? And she's like, uh-huh, that's my one friend Naomi. She just like that, right? Um, but these yellow alerts are things that we have to pay attention to. Here's some of the things that he talks about. Some of these external yellow alerts. He keeps coming home later and later with alcohol in his breath. The client's first check bounced. Get rid of them. You got to get rid of that client, right? He screamed at his secretary. What is that indicative of? If somebody's screaming at their secretary, what is that indicative of? What does that say about that person? That they have some kind of anger issue, right? And this was funny. On Oprah, Maya Angelou said, she said two things that were pretty profound in the show that I saw. One was she said, people will tell you who they are, right? So if you listen long enough, people will tell you who they are. So if someone said, so that was the first thing. And the second thing is believe what people tell you. For example, she said she was giving advice to a young lady, and the boyfriend told her that he was crazy. He was like, "Girl, I am crazy." She was like, my Angela was like, first of all, he just told you he was crazy. Secondly, believe him, right? And typically, people will tell you everything you need to know about them in the first 10 seconds of meeting them. Just think about that, right? In the first 10 seconds you meet somebody, they give you all the important information you need. And from that point, you can tell if they're a liar or if they're telling the truth. Because the longer you know them, whatever they profess in those first 10 seconds, you'll start to see as true, or you will see as not true, right? Um, so some of the internal yellow alerts. Now, this is really funny because I will trust my gut before I trust my head. Have you ever had that gut feeling about somebody or something? You go to make a decision and your head is doing all these calculations, but your gut is like, mm, we might need to hold off on this. But your brain is like, this is the only one. This is our time to do it, blah, blah, blah. And what happens when your gut says no, but your brain says yes, and you do it? What's that? Yeah, right. Oftentimes I'm like, why did I do that? I knew better. All right. But you guys probably haven't had any of those experiences. It's just me that has those experiences. Oh, it's not just me? Okay. All right. So, so we'll be taking some chapters out of that book. I thought this was an important one to take. Um, and so we'll talk more about that book a little bit later. Um, I wanted to expose you to Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, because we're going to talk about a great deal of those while we're in class. All right. So what I'd like for you to do, actually, I'm going to read over these, and then I'm going to ask you to do something with this information. So the first of the 7 habits of highly effective people is to be proactive. This is the ability to control one's environment rather than have it control you, like we did in the diagram, right? Um, Managers need to control their own environment, use self-determination, and the power to respond to various circumstances. Um, when they say managers, I want you to substitute all business metaphors for your personal metaphor, okay? So if it says manager, substitute manager for you. If it says business, substitute business for your life business, okay? Um, Second, begin with the end in mind. This means that the manager needs to be able to see desired outcome and concentrate on activities which help achieve that end. Um, what it, Next to that, around that, close to that, write the word goal oriented. Or just write the word goal next to that. So when we talk about the end in mind, we're talking about goals. Moving towards your goals. Number 3, put first things first. Managers need to personally manage themselves and implement activities which aim to achieve the second habit, which is begin with the end in mind, the goal. Looking for a desired outcome, Covey says that habit 2 is the first or mental creation, habit 3 is the second or physical creation. Before we go any further, what they're talking about is Stephen Covey says that there's 2 creations of things that happen. What Stephen Covey offers us is that there are 2 levels of creation. There is first the creation that happens in the mind's eye, or the thought of a thing. Everything around us was first created as a thought. The chairs you're sitting on was someone's thought, right? The table that you're sitting at, somebody thought of the design before it became physically created, right? So what he says is that everything in our environment starts off with a thought. And then that thought becomes part of our reality. And without it first being a thought, it will never come into reality. Right? So what he offers us is that thoughts are extremely important to the creation of the physical things around us. All right? Does that make sense? Look at architects, right? They have a specific and scientific thought process to get the desired results, right? I'm a really nice guy. Would you hire me to build your home? I'm a nice guy. You're gonna build a, $400,000 home. I can draw a little bit. I can do some stuff. Would you hire me? Why? Because I don't have the experience, and I may not have the knowledge or the mind's eye to get the kind of reality that you want to see. Okay? So habit 3 is put first things first. Another way to say that is what? Starts with pri and ends in orities. Put things in priorities. Flip over to the other side. Number 4 of the 7 habits is think win-win. And this is the most important aspect of interpersonal leadership because most achievements are based on cooperative effort. Therefore, the aim needs to be win-win, a win-win solution for all. right? So, finding allies, making sure that you are doing something that is not only beneficial to you, but beneficial to the community, because that's how you get what? To your goal. Other people can help you get to your goal, but that's also just how you get help, right? You get help that way. Number 5 is about communication, and it says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. By developing and maintaining positive relationships through good communication, the manager can be understood and can understand the subordinates. That seems kind of common sense, but why would Stephen Covey need to say that? Why would he need to say, seek first to understand, then to be understood? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I before coming to class, I stopped over at Wild Wings. No, what is that? Buffalo Wild Wings. Right. That's a restaurant, right? Yeah. Sports bar restaurant. So I'm sitting there, and I went there last week, and I got some kind of quesadilla something, some some quesadilla wrap or something, and it was good. And so I wanted to go back and have it again. And so I'm sitting there, and a young lady comes over and she says, "Well, what do you want to drink?" And I tell her that I want cranberry and orange juice. So she goes and she brings it back, and she said, "Did you have time to look at the menu?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. And I think I know what I want." And I said, "I want the chicken," and she said, "The chicken wrap with, Southwest sauce, blah blah blah." So I started the sentence, but she finished the sentence. So she takes her note back and brings up my stuff, and she brings me something that is not what I ordered, because she finished my what? My sentence, right? Was she following this premise? No. Why? Yeah. Have you had conversations with folks who've already made up their mind about what you're talking about? Yeah. How do you feel when that happens? Irritated. You just wasted my what? My time. If this is not going to be a real, authentic conversation, why am I even here? Right? Why? Why are we doing this? If you've already made up your mind. And so, is that person going to be on your team to help you, or are you going to be on that person's team to help them do whatever it is they need to do? Probably not. Or if you do, you'll do it, not at the best of your ability. Um, so it's important, and it's really interesting. I don't know if you've ever experienced this too, but I've been in situations where I felt like I was in a store and I was disrespected, right? And I've had a manager or some person come up and they're like, "Oh no, this was it. This was perfect story. I got to write this one down." So I had a chow chow. His name was Cassius, right? And I don't know if you know what chow chows look like, but they have a black tongue. They have kind of a smushed in face, and they're really fluffy. They look like little lions, right? And they have little curly tail or whatever. And Cassius, so we had Cassius at the house, and my partner at the time tried to groom him at home, and it just was bad because he's got so much hair, and she nicked him or something because he moved, and it was just so bad. So I was taking him to the groomers to get groomed, and so I take him to the groomers, And my dog is really fluffy. I mean, really big and fluffy. And that's the thing about chows that makes them stand out, right? That they're big and fluffy. And so I go in and I tell the guy, don't cut his. I know you got to chop off some of the hair on his body, but don't touch his head because that's one of the features. It looks like a lion kind of thing, right? So I said, don't touch his head, and I'll be back. Just call me when he's ready or whatever. And so that same day, I was going to the dentist, and I had a cavity filled. So I had the Novocaine in my mouth and all this kind of stuff. As a result of the Novocaine, I my tongue was still sleepy, so it wasn't easy to like talk or anything like that. And so I thought it best that I keep my mouth like this when I talk because I wouldn't bite my tongue, right? Because everything is still kind of lazy. And so I go in to go pick up my dog, and they had totally shaved my dog. I didn't even know what my dog looked like. Like he was in there, and I was like, "That's an odd looking. That's my dog, right?" I am livid up to here because I left specific instructions, right? You should have saw the stuff the manager was grabbing out the back to give me, right? He gave me mugs and calendars and dog treats and all this kind of stuff. I left with this big bag of stuff. But with all the stuff he was trying to offer me, did any of that meet my need? No. What first of all, I didn't want them to chop my dog up. But what do you think I wanted to give them and did not want to receive stuff? I wanted to give them some information, right? I wanted to give them a little piece of my mind and have a conversation and not get all this extra stuff. Um, in customer service, the thing that makes customer service good is when the people helping you actually what? Help or what? Listen. Most of customer service is about listening because most people just want to be heard. I can get my stuff back or you can give me a discount. I don't care, but I want you to hear why this was the way it is or why this turned out the way it did. Um, so, because in the human heart, all we really want to do, on one of the most basic levels, is be understood by other people, right? That's why all the loner kids, you ever seen those kids that are loners or I guess they're calling them emo kids now, or the kids that dress in all black or, whatever. What's that? The gothic kids, right? It was so funny because when I taught at high school, all the loner kids, right? They would be like, I'm a loner. I'm by myself. But who would all the loner kids hang out with? Other loner kids. So they were never what? Alone. It was so funny. Um, but everybody seeks to find groups where they can be understood. Everybody wants to be understood. Um, so number six is habit six is this habit is creative cooperation. This takes the best of everybody's ideas and puts them into action. And then lastly, I don't know how that got somebody's puzzle on there. Anyway, um, this encourages sharpening the saw. Just means that you keep going over these things. You keep trying to get better. You keep trying to work at those things. All right. So what I'd like for you to do at this point is to read these, and I want you to give me a practical example of how you see this principle operating in the world or in your life. All right. So give me a practical example of how you see each of these principles acting in your life. All right. Yes, for each of them.